Hello and welcome to Geek Talk Episode 1, where I talk about geeky things. At least what I consider geeky, which is video games, comics, anime, other fandoms like Harry Potter, stuff like that, or just geek culture in general. All is game. So today we'll be talking about the big bad video game timeline, which I have right here. It appears backwards on the screen, but I'm gonna read it to you. So, video games started in 1972, which is a very long time ago, which is when we have the first generation, and at least this video was made in 2017, we are currently in the 8th generation, which started in about 2013, with the exception of handheld consoles, which had their big thing in around 2011. So, then we have our second generation in 1976, followed by the great video game crash of 1983. While some people prefer Microsoft and PlayStation over Nintendo, without Nintendo, there would be no more video games, because with their games like Donkey Kong and the release of the NES kinda saved us all from the great thing called the video game crash of 1983, which was, I hate to say it, we all love the movie E.T., but the video game kinda had a very major part in almost completely destroying the video game industry. Good job, E.T. So, our third generation starts in 1983. The fourth generation was in 1987, the fifth generation in 1993, the sixth generation 1998, the seventh generation started in 2004. So I will be going generation by generation, showing you what consoles came out in each generation. The first video game generation contained the Magnavox Odyssey and Pong. So not exactly much was going on, as those were the major factors of video games. A lot of stuff was based off Pong. There really was no winning involved. It was all very blocky, no color, like black and white, very, what is the word I'm looking for here? Provincial, very provincial. Our second generation released Sega's first console, the SG-1000, the first handheld, the Milton Bradley Microvision, the Atari 2600, which housed E.T. and a bunch. There were a couple good games, but most of them were very cringy and very low quality. And then the Intellivision. So pretty much a lot of low quality games were coming out, and which eventually caused the market to crash. Now we have the third generation, which came out after the video game crash, which was the 8-bit era, where things started to look less like Pong and more like Mario, like actual things. We saw the NES, the Sega Master System, and Atari's first attempt after the video game crash, the Atari 7800. Now we have the 16-bit era, where we can see things like the Sega Mega Drive, which was called the Genesis in North America, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the SNES, the Sega Mega CD, Atari's last attempt into the market, the Atari Jaguar, which went about as well as you would think. And we have our fifth generation, which housed 32 and 64-bit games, as well as introducing us to very blocky 3D. Like, you'd think it looks really horrible today, but it was absolutely revolutionary at the time. You have the Sega Saturn, the Sony PlayStation, so Sony came in at this time, the N64, the Game Boy, and the Game Boy Pocket as well. And yeah, once again, there were also 2D games at the time, but it was a lot of 3D. Then we have our sixth generation, the 128-bit era, with the Sega Dreamcast, which was Sega's last console, the PlayStation 2, the GameCube, and the Xbox, which was Microsoft's first attempt. Now, a lot of people ask, why didn't the GameCube sell well? Well, the PS2 had a larger library, and the Xbox had more power. So, at the time, the GameCube was inferior to both, which caused it to have low sales. Next up, we have the 7th generation with the Nintendo Wii, the Nintendo DS, the PlayStation 3, and the Xbox 360. So the Wii had a certain goal, which was to make video games accessible for the whole family, which is why it sold extremely well. It also had solid motion controls. Now, PlayStation at one point tried to do motion controls. It had something very similar to the Wii, but it didn't work out quite as well. Now we have our current generation, the 8th generation. We have the Wii U, the PS4, the Xbox One, the Nintendo 3DS, as well as, which was the most recently released, the new Nintendo 3DS XL, which is a mouthful to say, and the PlayStation Vita, which was the follow-up to the PSP. So what is the future for a 9th generation? Well, we'll have the PS5, the next Xbox console, and maybe the Nintendo Switch, which is coming out this year. So the big question is the 9th generation going to start with the Nintendo Switch this year, or is it going to be farther down the line, like 2019, 2020? So only time will really be able to tell when the 9th generation is starting. Please, I have all my sources down in the description, so go and support them and check them out. Please like and subscribe! Woohoo! And have a fabulous day.